Hey everyone, Hermann Luttmann here again. I'm going to take you through a brief tutorial, or at least an overview of how to play Tattered Flags into the Whirlpool. I'm going to go through the sequence of play, the rule book, and just basically describe how the game's played. Not too much detail, but enough to give you an idea of what you're getting into. To start, as far as the components go, I explained the map in the other video. I'll give you a little bit more detail on the units themselves. So what you see here, let's look at the Confederate side. This is the scenario, the Downeasters wall that I set up. And what you see here, the Confederate force is a brigade under the command of Anderson. So every brigade has its own leader counter. In this brigade are a number of different regiments. Each regiment is made up of 1 to 5 of these stands. Now, each stand, I'll use this one as an example. We'll have the name of the regiment here. Nice illustration of the troops. This white number on the top left here is their experience rating. That's how good they are. That's their basic quality, and gives you an idea of what they can do in the gameplay as well. On the right side, you'll see that there's a 1 in a brownish red circle. Now all these units have that same, and that's the brigade identification. And Anderson's piece also has that identification, so you can instantly see all the units that belong to this brigade. This is the 8th Georgia Regiment, and the other piece of information on here, it'll tell you in 2 numbers here, this one's 2/3, that tells you that this is the second stand of 3 in the 8th Georgia. The other part is right here, there's 1 and 3. And the number 1 stand of every regiment has their standard. So you'll see a little flag here. The Confederates have lots of different flags. And this is their command unit. All right, this is where a lot of the status markers go for the regiment, and just gives you an idea of where the colonel is, the standard bearer, the drummer, all that kind of thing. So, this particular brigade is made of a number of regiments, each of a number of stands. So once you get the organization down, the game functions based on that organization, a lot of the mechanics. A unit, so the way the 8 stars work, is a unit will sit in a space and it will point towards one of these 8 stars. So this unit's facing this way, that way, all around. And the adjacent spaces are 8, and they're the next space that that is being pointed to. So for an example here, these are the 8 adjacent spaces, and the star points to each one of these. So that's how movement works, and ranging and engagement. So let's go into the sequence of play. First thing everybody's going to do is the 2 players are going to roll for initiative. So you're going to roll, each going to roll a d10. High die roll gets the initiative. If you beat the other player by double, you roll an 8, they roll a 4. You get what's called dominant initiative. When you place your game turn marker down, you're going to place it with the dominant side facing the player so you can tell. And what that means is that player is going to be able to activate an extra brigade. Normally, the Union can activate 2 brigades, Confederates 1. The reason for that is the Union brigades are a lot smaller than the Confederate brigades. If you tie your die rolls, the player who had initiative before gets momentum initiative, and that lets them activate a previously activated regiment. I'll explain more on that later. We go through decide who's got initiative. The initiative player decides who's the first player, who's the second player. You can win the initiative and not necessarily be the first player. You might want the other player to go first. So whoever is the first player will activate a brigade, or in the case of the Union players, 2 brigades. And that's simply done by saying, in this particular scenario, it's nice and easy since you only have these few brigades here. So if you're the Confederate player and you win, you say, all right, I'm activating Anderson. You flip over Anderson's piece and it says activate on that side, so you keep track. You have to give an order to a brigade, and you do that during this part. And at the beginning of the game, you can give any order you want. So let's say Anderson is under an assault order. So you stick that order underneath there. Maybe the Union player had started the game under a defend order for de Trobriand over here, and a defend order for Burling. Well, let's say a maneuver order for Burling. Now what these orders do, there's 6 of them, and there's a marker for each one. You're going to place it underneath the leader, and that just gives you your parameters for play. You'll see on the, I don't know if you can see this, but on the player aid it tells you the brigade orders and what you are allowed to do under each order, what you're not allowed to do, and what you, some have bonuses. So for an assault order you're allowed to charge. You can't charge under any other kind of order. If you're further into the game, and let's say you wanted de Trobriand to attack, you have to change his order. You can't just arbitrarily do it. You actually have to roll on the change order table, and his quality will tell you how well you do. He may not change his order. He may get what you call an order delay, which is I can give him an order, but it's not going to actually take place until the following turn. So you stick the order under this one, and there's a 1-turn delay. So you've got your orders set up, everything's good, you're happy, and then you go through the sequence. So you're going to activate the brigade, and then you're going to do one formation at a time. A formation is an infantry regiment, let's say the 8th Georgia or the 9th Georgia in this case, or it could also be a battery. Now batteries, only the Union player has batteries. They function as their own brigade and their own formation. So when the Union player goes, he's going to say, I'm activating de Trobriand and let's say Winslow's battery. That acts as a brigade itself. They don't have orders. They can do whatever they want within certain limitations, but they can fire, they can move, but they have to limber and unlimber. So, as I said, this is a very tactical game, so it's a little unusual for me to do a tactical game like this. So you do your activations. Let's say you want to move. So moving is very simple. It's moving a unit to the next space, for example. It could be pivoting one angle and then moving. Okay, there's no moving diagonally, you have to move straight. Or you have to pivot. You can sidle, which is move sideways, which costs 2 actions to do. Or you can fall backwards, that's fall back, that's 2 actions to do. Or you can redress. So, how many actions can you do? Well, that's this big number right here. So, for example, this unit has 3 actions it could do. It might want to move straight 3 times. It might want to pivot this way for 1, go straight twice, that's 3 actions. Now, if you move across certain types of terrain, that can be disrupting. So let's say he does do this move. Well, moving through heavy woods is disrupting, so you're going to get a disruption for your formation, unless you redress, which is basically doing nothing and sitting. So redressing would prevent all that disruption. What else can you do during your action? You can conduct fire combat. One thing I forgot to mention real quickly is these brigade leaders have to be within command range of their regiments. So their command range is equal to the number of stars on their stand, and the idea is you've got to try to keep all your regiments within command range. If you don't, if let's say the 9th wandered out here somewhere and is now over here, so they're out of command range, you're going to put an out of command marker on these units. They're going to lose 1 action, so instead of 4 they get 3. And the other thing that happens to them is they keep the order that they were on originally. So if they were under an assault order, you'd put an assault order chit here, and they'd stay under an assault order until you brought them back within command. So that's very important. Now, you can also use that to your advantage. If you want them to keep assaulting while Anderson goes and does something else, that's cool. Except they're going to be doing it with 1 less action. So, as I said before, there's movement, there's stacking. You can stack 2 units together, that's it. No more than that. The other important thing is formation integrity. So you'll understand this as you play the game, but just to give you an idea. So let's take I'll say with the 9th Georgia. You could take the 9th Georgia and move each of these stands individually, have them facing this way and that way, however you want. But they must maintain formation integrity. And that means every stand of the 9th Georgia has to be adjacent to another stand of the 9th Georgia. And so you end up making your own formations, okay? And this happened quite often in the Civil War. They were reacting to different threats. They make bent lines, they might make a double line, they might make a straight line. So there's no quote-unquote formations that you have to form. You form them yourself, but every piece must be adjacent to another piece of that regiment. So that gives you some flexibility, but I think you'll find as you play the game that you're going to be using the actual formations. Columns, units that are one behind another will move faster, more efficiently. They will fire more efficiently in line, and you can refuse flanks, which they did normally as well. So that's the maneuver part of it. Let's say you want to fire. So firing is done by percentage dice. Firing takes up one action to actually do the fire. So let's say that this unit is over here, and it wants to fire at this unit. So you have three actions. If it starts right here, you have three actions to fire. So you can use one action to actually fire, then you have two actions left. And then what you do then is you get extra volleys. So the one action is used to issue the fire, and then you can enhance that fire with the other two actions. And what that does is it gives you an extra percentage to hit. So from here, depending on the range, there's three different ranges. There's point blank, there's battle range, there's extreme range. That gives you a basic percentage chance to hit. So let's say here, basic percentage chance is 30%. And let's say they're using all their actions just to fire at the 17th main. So that's two extra fire actions, and for each extra fire action, you get another 15%. That's 30 plus 15 plus 15, so you're at 60% chance to hit right now. Then there are other little modifiers here that will affect that percentage chance. They're behind a stone wall, so they're going to take off 10% for that. If a formation is disrupted, that takes off some percentages. You end up with a net percentage chance to hit. So you roll your dice. Let's say blue is high. That's a 41. So if that's above your percentage chance to hit, nothing happens. If it's below it, that's a hit. If it's half or less below, that is a murderous hit. And a murderous hit is applied slightly differently than a regular hit. If you roll doubles and hit, so let's say I rolled an 11 or something like that, that's a critical hit. And that also has a different effect. So for a regular hit, you take out your hit marker, you put it out there, and you just keep that as an advice for applying later. If you got less than half or less, that's a murderous hit, you'd put that out. And if you got a catastrophic hit, or a critical hit, you'd put that out. So then after, let's say the 59th Georgia does all its stuff, you apply these hits. A regular hit will increase the disruption of the target. And that's simply done by taking a disrupt marker and sticking it under the command stand. And now you know that the 17th main has one disruption. If it's a murderous hit, well, a murderous hit is exceptionally bad, obviously, and you apply casualties for that. What's a casualty? Casualty is flipping this unit over to its battle-worn side. That's bad. Because if that happens again, that's going to rout. A critical hit is additional. So you apply a hit, and then the critical hit, you have a choice. You're either going to add another disruption to the hit, so 2 disruption, or this unit can withdraw. So it's an exceptionally bad hit. We don't know what happened. Maybe they got flanked, maybe the officer went down, whatever, but something bad happened to these guys, and then it's up to you to apply it how you see fit. So there are various ranges for fire combat. The artillery can fire a long way, and there are rules for obscured fire, blocking line of sight. It's actually very easy. You'll see, one thing I forgot to mention on the map is you'll see these different levels, elevations. So this is level 03, so this is all 03 in here, this is 02, this is 01, and you can fire over guys, you can fire over trees, but that will obscure fire, and that will be a negative percentage on your fire. That's most of what you need to know about fire combat. It's going to go back and forth and apply disruptions and hits and all sorts of other nonsense on the other guy. Then you have close combat. So close combat can only be done when you're under an assault order. Close combat is resolved during the mutual close combat phase. So you have to be under an assault order, you have to be adjacent to the enemy you want to charge. And during the mutual close combat phase, players will alternate sending off their charges. So the way that's done is you declare the charge, so you do the charge move, and then there's a series of tests. So this is done like a miniatures game where you're going back and forth with these tests. First, the defender takes a morale test to hold. Will they stand there as these guys are charging? All right. You go on this chart here, you're rolling 2 dice as a percentage, reading across, and it'll tell you what is this defender going to do. Now, their quality of being able to stand up to the charge depends on that experience rating as well. The result will tell you whether they pass, whether they issue defensive fire, whether they withdraw. If they stand there and they get a DF result, they can issue defensive fire, which means they get a fire combat shot at these chargers. Then the charging unit has to take a morale test to close, meaning now they see this guy standing there. Now will they finish the charge or will they back off? That's also a morale test for them. Very simple, charging test to close, roll the dice, do some modifiers, and apply the result. If these guys also pass, then you have full bayonet combat right there. Bayonet combat is done very similarly to fire combat. Both sides roll against one another, but the hits are far more deadly. So, for example, a normal hit is called a murderous bayonet hit, which will automatically apply casualties. If it's half or less, it's a catastrophic bayonet hit, which will eliminate the enemy stand. And critical hits will cause retreats. So, to get to close combat, it's a much more dynamic and critical event on the battlefield. You're trying to push these guys out of their position. It's deadly. Normally, one unit or the other is going to get scared and either not finish their charge or scare off the defenders. But it's a very important part of the game if you want to dislodge a defender from a position, and the Confederates will be in the position of having to do that more often than the Union. So that's close combat. Reorganization. So what happens is these units will build up disruption, all right, either from moving, from combat, whatever the case. They can only get up to disruption 6. When they get to disruption 6, you can no longer take disruption. You have to start taking casualties. So you'll want to have your units try to rest and reorganize and try to get this disruption back down. Any units that are at disruption 6 when you get to the mutual rally phase will have to take a formation morale test, meaning they're so disrupted that the entire regiment's going to test morale and find out if they actually withdraw from the battlefield involuntarily. They just decide to go back, or the colonel tells them they have to go back. So reorganization is very important. You can restore order by reducing your disruption level. You can recover casualties by, if a unit is on its battle-worn side, you can have it flip back over to its first side, but that costs 2 reorganize, and there's only a few orders that allow 2 reorganizes. And there's also rebuild. So if you actually lose a stand completely, the command stand can try to bring this back into the game, but it will come back battle-worn. So units are never totally eliminated. If you bring your units back and reorganize them, you can actually get them back into fighting shape, usually disrupted somewhat, but you can get them back into the game. I talked about morale tests. They occur throughout the game. Your units will do things on their own. There's nothing you can do about that. If units get in really, really bad shape, or they do particularly poorly on a morale test, they can become shattered. And shattered is you lose only your command unit remains, it gets a shattered marker placed on it, and it starts running. And during the rally phase, you have to try to rally it. If it fails its rally, it could shatter, just leave entirely, or run off the board. So that's when the formations get in really bad shape. The battle cards. So throughout the game, players are going to be getting these battle cards. And these can be used as you need. They all do different things. They all have different events that you can do. As I said before, there's a default event. So if you really want to move somebody one space, or you really need to have this guy fire one time, you can just take this card and toss it and use it for that. But all of these have really interesting effects, regimental initiative where they ignore their order and they do something on their own. So if you have a regiment that's in a bad order, but you wanted to charge or run away, whatever you wanted to do, you can try to play this card and have the local guy change his order himself. There's Rally Around the Flag where you can do emergency rallies. There's some historically Gettysburg specific, like where Longstreet directs the attack or Sickles directs the defense. You have Rebel Yell, which I think is in every single one of my Civil War games, is a Rebel Yell, or Hold the Line card. So all these add to the flavor of the game, but also add to your tactical decision making. And some break the rules, so you can do things that maybe you didn't plan for, but you want to take an opportunity. And that's about it. There's a lot more to the game, but it's been a lot already. It's a crunchy game, but I intentionally made sure that it was not too difficult to play. There's a lot of abstracted things, and I think you'll enjoy it because it doesn't get too low into the weeds as far as tactical details and calculations. After a while, you'll be able to recognize fire combat situations, and you'll know generally that you need a 30. So a lot of times you can just roll the dice before you even do all your calculations, and I see I rolled a 59 and I know that my guy missed on a 59. So you can save a lot of time. You don't even have to look up every modifier. You'll get it after a while. Anyway, that's it. That's Tattered Flags Into the Whirlpool. I hope you enjoy it. If you have any questions, please let us know, and I'll be happy to answer any on Board Game Geek or Consom World or by email, whatever you like. I hope you have a good time with it. Thank you.
Tattered Flags #1, Into the Whirlpool, is available now from Blue Panther. Go to bluepantherllc.com, $60 US. It's for 2 players. It can be played solitaire, but there are no specific solitaire rules. Thanks for watching.